Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fresh Take from What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret, and today I am talking to Jenny Wood. In her 18 years at Google, Jenny Wood grew from entry-level to executive, and she most recently led a large operations team that helped drive billions of revenue per year. In 2021, she started a passion project within Google called Own Your Career, which grew to one of the largest career development programs in Google's history. Through the program she founded, she has trained tens of thousands of people in a range of skills, including acing a job search, building relationships, and most importantly, increasing confidence. Jenny's writing has been featured in Harvard Business Review, Entrepreneur Inc., and Forbes. She is an FAA licensed private pilot, a daily hiker, an improv student, a tap dancer, and a zucchini bread connoisseur. I love that bio. Welcome, Jenny.
It's so nice to be here. How's it going?
I know my way around a zucchini bread, too. So, we might have to have a zucchini bread face-off at some point.
Well, here's the most important question. With chocolate chips or without chocolate chips?
Only with chocolate chips. I don't even understand.
Oh, only without chocolate chips. So if there's a loaf and one slice has a lot and one slice has very few, we know exactly how we would share.
I feel the chocolate chips are what sells it to the children. I'm chocolate chips and everything. That's my philosophy.
Although my son, not a chocolate person. He's a candy guy.
But not chocolate.
Not chocolate. Yeah. And I was the same as a kid. So
I'm also not a huge chocolate person, but I like a little chocolate chip every once in a while. I mean, we could talk about zucchini bread all day, friends, but we're actually here to talk about Jenny's book, Wild Courage. I want to start with something very shallow. Such a gorgeous cover on this book.
You know what? I am so excited that you said that. We went through 75 options for the cover, and then I still wanted to see more. And it was actually something that I had to check myself before I wrecked myself and ruined relationships with the publisher and the design team. And then we went with this and I absolutely love it. And the top is embossed and super fancy, which they only do for 5% of books. So I feel very grateful. Thank you.
It's gorgeous looking. We're going to link to it, but check out the cover and it'll get you involved.
Yeah.
So let's talk about wild courage. What's this term? What does it mean to you? And why did you want to write a book about wild courage?
Think of something you want right now. It could be a goal, a relationship, something for your child. And think about what's standing between you and achieving that thing for yourself or for them. By the time I started writing this book, I'd coached, as you said, tens of thousands of Google executives, non-executives, inside and outside the company, directly or indirectly, on how to go after what they want and get it. And the same theme kept coming up, their relationship to fear. What's the opposite of fear? Courage. And it was fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of judgment of others. And so wild courage is essentially the process of feeling that fear and going after what you want for you or helping your kids do the same. Or it's the set of tools to actually put this into action and to get what you want.
And it's interesting because possibly someone is listening to this with 3 little kids and a basket of laundry and feeling very overwhelmed, just like, I can't even figure out what's for dinner. I can't even picture a world in which Google executives are doing exciting and dynamic, frightening things. But the idea of facing fear and overcoming it with courage really applies for moms every day.
Yeah. And, we'll get into the 9 traits that I invite people to reclaim, but that was my weekend, right? I'm just on the precipice of this book launch and it's so incredibly exciting. And there's 250 things to do on my book to-do list, plus the laundry and the dishes and making the bed and all these things. And like a part of it is just, this is one of the 9 traits, being selfish. And selfish is not a bad thing as a mom. Selfish is the courage to stand up for what you want and what you need. It's being your own champion. It's, the fact that if you give everyone a leg up at your expense, you'll end up getting trampled. So how do you start showing up for yourself, especially as a mom, especially as a working mom? And that's what I had to do this weekend. I had to say, John, I need to handwrite 300 note cards to people who have supported this book because I'm sending them an advanced copy or, I'm sending them like a fancy VIP box with the book. And I was like, I need you to take the kids to a bounce place and I just need you to be out for 5 hours and I need you to not text or call or contact me about anything. That was my flavor of selfish this weekend. And it sounds like a bad thing. Who wants to be selfish? But I had to stand up for what I needed this weekend. And that can be so hard, but it's so critical to success for you and for your kids because they want to see you out there kicking butt and taking names. They want to see you taking care of yourself. It's the classic put on your own oxygen mask first. And sometimes that is doing things that matter for your career.
Yeah. And I think we often talk about on the podcast that defining the worth of what you're doing, whether it is launching a book or whether it is taking a time to do a painting that you want to do or whatever. We can feel sometimes when we're home and with kids that, well, I don't need courage. I'm just kind of slogging through the day. But identifying that moment of, I need to ask for what I need. If we skip that step, then we just end up in what our former guest Lynetta Willis calls stable misery, just kind of getting through every day and never accessing that.
Right. And I call that silent suffering. And I think a lot of us as moms silently suffer. And I think there's so much more out there waiting for us. We need to recognize that we can do better. Like we can be shameless. This is another one of the 9 traits. And shameless is the courage to stand behind your efforts, abilities, and desires, right? This is about finding your swagger and audacity, or what I call shamelessness, is basically a survival skill because you might think, oh, well, who am I? Who am I to want to go out and rejoin the workforce? Or who am I to go out for drinks with my friends when it's bedtime and my kids want me to kiss them on the forehead each night? Like, again, it's tied very closely to selfish, but who are you? You are someone talented and smart and thoughtful and eager and capable, and you deserve success as well, whatever success looks like for you. And if you're a stay-at-home mom, then success looks very, different than a working mom, but that might be proactively building your friendships and proactively getting together with your community because those relationships take investment and they don't just thrive on their own. And it is okay. It is thrilling to do something for yourself. So what have you done this week just for you? Nobody else. What have you done? What did you do last week, right? Maybe write it down. Maybe write down one thing you're proud of that you did last week for yourself and write down one thing that you're going to do this week just for yourself. Nobody else, not for your kids, not for a partner, not for work, just for you.
And you say something in the book that is my rallying cry. I was so glad to read it. Fear isn't useless. Fear is a compass. And I say often my mom was a therapist and I've always struggled with anxiety, continue to struggle with anxiety. But my mom has passed, but I still hear her voice in my head. And she always used to say, fear isn't bad. The anxious bunny survives. Fear is a tool, but it's understanding. Talk a little bit about the role of fear, because I think sometimes we think fear is to be eliminated. Fear is our enemy. And I think often when we're moms, a whole new door of fears opens up and the fear bats come flying out. And it can be very overwhelming to feel fearful.
Oh, 100%. I think it's also a signal that you're doing the right thing, that you're on the edge of growth, that you are doing something that matters. The body interprets and the brain interpret fear and excitement the same way. Higher levels of cortisol, adrenaline, you've got, blood that rushes to your extremities, your pupils dilate, right? It's all about how you interpret that feeling and what the packaging is around that feeling. And this is where I like to use a tool called truths and tales. What are the truths in a situation and what are the verifiable facts? And what are the tales you tell yourself to make sense of those facts or the stories you tell yourself? And they can be positive or negative. So let's take one of the scariest things I've ever done. I was at Google for 18 years, grew from entry level to executive, had this incredible team, had a ton of responsibility. And all of a sudden, there's all this external excitement and interest in my work for this passion project I started at Google called Own Your Career. And I realized that like a book might be on the horizon, and there was interest from literary agents and publishers. And I got to this point where I realized I could no longer do all of it. Okay. And I was terrified. So talk about fear. And my emotional health, my mental health, my physical health was just shot. I was up between 2 and 5 a.m. so many nights. I remember driving my son Ari back from choir. We live in Boulder at the base of the foothills, lots of windy roads. It's about an hour drive. And I realized, did my eyes just flutter closed for a second driving Ari back from choir? And so something had to give, right? You can do everything. You can't do it all at the same time. And I was trying to do it all at the same time. And yet so much pressure on myself, breadwinner for my family, lots of excitement about my role at Google. But the fear came when I thought about actually leaving Google. I never thought about leaving Google. I thought I'd be there 15 more years and retire there. So what were the facts that were part of the story, right? If I left Google, I would make less money in my first year, right? I would be leaving to be a writer. I would not be able to be part of this big corporate community. Those were the facts. Those are the truths. What were the tales that I was telling myself? Everyone's going to be disappointed in me. I'm going to be a failure. I'm going to be a starving artist. My parents are going to think I'm ridiculous and putting my family at risk financially. We're going to have to move out of our nice house in Boulder. My kids are going to be mad at me because they can't come and have the snacks at Google, right? So tale.
That's an important one.
I know. That was, funnily enough, it's like,
I've been to Google headquarters and the snacks are amazing.
Amazing, right? Like miso dusted cod made to order omelets, like filet mignon, like amazing. So, and it's incredible the power our kids have over us. It's like, who cared about the financial situation? I was like, I don't want my kids to not have happiness and snacks, right? So,
yes.
But when you're trying to overcome fear, separating the truths and the tales, like what is actually true in this situation? And what am I just telling myself that's unhelpful and creating that lowercase a or capital A anxiety? And then when you're able to separate it and tell yourself a more empowering tale, or at least a neutral tale, you're in a much better place to go after what you want and achieve it.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's we often say, watch your story, and it is so fundamental to this. And you also talk really specifically about that there are things that undermine our courage and that those are kind of quantifiable. So talk about, and people will recognize these, but I think sometimes it's helpful to say, oh, wait a minute, other people know about these things as well.
Yeah, what undermines the courage is those 3 fears: fear of failure, fear of uncertainty, fear of judgment of others. And I had a situation where I was in New York and I was there traveling for work. I had my whole team there. I was leading a big town hall. Like my boss sat there. I had all these teammates in from India, and I get a call from my mother-in-law. My daughter had come with me in New York, and she was staying with my mother-in-law about 2 hours away on Long Island, and my father-in-law. And I got a call from her as I was in a breakfast meeting with a colleague. So my mother-in-law said, Jenny, there's been an accident. We were baking M&M cookies and Noah's hair got caught in the mixer, tearing out some of her hair. So I am devastated. And yet she tells me that she's fine and that, they FaceTimed our cousin who's a pediatrician, and he said it's going to grow back. Like there's no damage to the scalp. And I had this fear that day of judgment of others, judgment from my peers, judgment from my direct reports, judgment from my boss, that if I were to leave the office and immediately get on a train to Long Island and be there for my daughter and give her a hug, that people would be judging me as not dedicated. And they were even telling me the opposite. They were even telling me, Jenny, go do what you need to do. So maybe I was judging myself. And I have this line in the book, rationalization is so powerful, it should require a background check, right? And I was rationalizing, she's fine. My in-laws said she's happy dancing with her little cousins. They bought her some sequin hats. And, I kept checking in, but they kept saying, Jenny, no need to come. But it was all based on fear of judgment of others and really fear of my coworkers are saying, oh, Jenny, don't worry about it. You can go. I felt like I was voting with my calendar that day and I was sticking to those meetings. And it was the most terrible decision I've ever made. When I saw her a few days later, it was a 6x8 size bald spot on her head, completely bald. And I was horrified at my decision. And it's all based in fear, right? As opposed to just making the brutal call to go be with her that day and say, nothing else matters. This is what matters. And I spend many of my therapy appointments talking about mom guilt. And there's one thing to like have your nanny pick the kids up from school every Wednesday, but this felt like a moment that mattered. And I had failed myself and my team by setting a bad example, and certainly my daughter. So fear can show up in a lot of different ways.
And definitely a story everyone listening wants to give you a little back pat because we've all been there. I'm talking to Jenny Wood. She is the author of Wild Courage. Go after what you want and get it. And we will be right back.
Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH. All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE.
Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, and it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women, tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING.
So let's talk about the structure of the book. As you referenced, you take 9 traits in the book, 9 words that people, maybe especially women, are called, and flip them and redefine them. So talk about this structure, how you landed on it, and why this is the approach that you wanted to give us this information through.
Yeah. So it is these 9 traits that unfortunately can create the bars of an invisible cage that keep us small. But when used in a sane and savvy way, these 9 traits can be superpowers. So the 9 traits are weird, selfish, shameless, nosy, obsessed, manipulative, brutal, reckless, and bossy. It's not things you think you want to be called, but when reclaimed, they can really be so powerful. And so how did these 9 come about? Well, it all started in 2011 when I'm riding the subway home from work in New York City. And about 20 feet away from me stands this really good looking guy. And I'm thinking, what's he all about? He's gorgeous. Look at those blue eyes, that thick wavy hair. And even though I want to talk to him, something holds me back. Let's go back to those 3 fears. Fear of uncertainty. What if he's a convicted felon? Fear of failure. What if he's married? Fear of judgment of others. What if 100 people stare at me on this packed train while I make a fool of myself trying to talk to him? So I sit there and I do nothing as the train passes stop after stop and life passes me by. But I make a deal with the universe and I say, if he gets off at my stop, 72nd Street, I will try to strike up a conversation with him. And if not, then say la vie.
Love this next part.
He gets off at the next stop, 59th Street. And I all of a sudden feel this wave of wild courage wash over me, and almost like a force, it pushes me off the subway train without me being able to think. And I, no joke, pry the doors open and run off the train. I catch up with him. I tap him on the shoulder. I say, excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but you were on my subway and I thought you were cute. You're wearing gloves, so I can't tell if you're wearing a wedding ring, but in the event that you're not married, can I give you my business card? And then I wait for what feels like forever for him to respond, thinking, this was a terrible idea. You are an idiot. And then finally, he takes the card. He calls me the next day. We go out a week later. We get married 3 years later. And now we've got a 9 and a 7-year-old. We've been married 11 years. So why these 9 traits? That day, I was selfish. I went after what I wanted instead of waiting for it to come to me. He didn't even see me on the subway, right? I was obsessed. I had been dating for years in Manhattan. At one point, I went on 5 dates in 24 hours. I was in it to win it. I was ready to get married. And I was like, all right, if I'm going to be obsessed, then I got to go seize the moment. I was reckless, right? That's err on the side of action and take healthy risks. Sure, he could have been an axe murderer, but what are the chances, honestly, right? So I decided better to think fast and fearless. And if you're on the fence, do it. And in that moment, I was on the fence, and then this moment of wild courage washed over me and I went for it.
Yeah. And I think there might be people listening who think, I could never do that. I would never do that. I was in a similar situation as a dater and older than most daters at the time. And for me, I had always been like, oh, meeting people on the internet is for total losers. You know, this was in a different era. Now everyone I know has met someone on the internet.
For sure, for sure.
And for me, it was the moment of just signing up and trying. Met my husband, it's going great. But I think for people listening, it is, you have to adjust your courage, it seems to me, from your starting place. But that for people, it might just be saying to all of your friends, I'm looking to get back to work after being at home for 15 years, and I don't know the first step. Who do you know? How could you help me? And that the courage that that takes is huger than we recognize, because you're saying to people, I want something I don't have. I don't know the path to get it. And just putting it out there that you want to do it is frightening.
Yes. Truer words have never been spoken, because maybe you're not a subway chaser. That is totally fair. But wherever you sit right now, whether it's rejoining the workforce or asking for a raise or asking for a promotion or asking a new friend in a city to go out for coffee, it takes courage to make that small ask. You know, this happened on the beach with my son the other day, where we were on vacation and there was a group of kids who were playing with like a bunch of colorful buckets. And he's like, Mom, will you go ask them for a bucket? And I was like, no, sweetie, I'm not going to ask. You can ask yourself. Like, you can build that muscle. Teeny, tiny moment of courage, right? Tiny moment of courage. Happened also the other day with my daughter in the ice cream shop. Mom, I want more sprinkles. I don't think they put enough on. And I was like, Noah, if you want more sprinkles, you can walk up. You can say, excuse me, can I just have a little bit more sprinkles? And so, yes, it feels very daunting to think of this in terms of chasing a stranger off the New York City subway. I don't expect anybody to have that baseline level of courage. And honestly,
we may not even want a rash of people chasing people off the subway. That may not be our goal here.
Right, Totally. Even for me, that was like a weird fluke of a moment that happened. And then of course, everything that came from it is such an unusual serendipity, right? I do say serendipity isn't found, it's made. So I made my own serendipity that day. But think how you can make your own serendipity by, yes, writing down your dynamic dozen, the 12 people, if you're looking to get back in the workforce, that you want to meet in the next 12 weeks. Write it down. By the end of today, you can probably come up with 12 names really easily, right? Or maybe if you're in the working world, it's the courage to write your boss what I call the Monday mini festo, a 15-minute email where you have 2 bullets of things you're proud of from last week and 2 bullets of things that you want to accomplish next week. We talked about that at the beginning of the conversation, right? In a different way where like, what can you do for yourself? One thing last week, one thing this week. You can apply that same courage at work and just what I would call shamelessly, right? Sharing with your boss what your strengths are and what you were working on. I mean, I always say that 50% of the job is doing the job and 50% of the job is communicating up, down, and across. And we should never overlook that. And that takes courage. Sending a ping, sending a Slack, sending an email, picking up the phone, putting your resume together takes courage. And even if it's just setting a timer for 60 minutes for tomorrow, a 60-minute block where you turn off your phone alerts and you close your tabs and you just work on that resume and you reach out to one of those 12 people you wrote down. That takes courage and it's incredibly high impact.
I want to walk through the traits and talk about, because so many of them spoke to me. I now have tweens, and that's not true. I have only teens. My tween became a teen 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
So starting with weird, and you flip this definition to say, it's the courage to stand out. And I think that this is a place where my kids are living right now, that pretty much your only job in middle school and especially early high school is to fit the mold of the coolest kid in the room at all times. And that the idea of standing out, I'm from a different generation. I think this was so important when I was a kid. I do see it changing a little bit with my kids, that maybe being the cookie cutter popular kid is a little bit less the North Star for every kid. But talk about that dynamic shift from you're weird to you have the courage to stand out.
Yeah, it is interesting. And it does, where you are in life is certainly relevant, because I also talk about how it is the North Star to kind of fit the mold, right? And to fit in and to wear the same jeans everyone is wearing. I mean, I see teenage girls walk around in Boulder and I'm like, they're wearing the identical jeans. All of them, it is a uniform. It's a crop top and they're stonewashed and they're wide legged and they're high waisted and they're, I'm just like, I didn't get the memo. I guess I don't have teens yet, but.
And flip side, I was just at Hudson Yards in New York City, which if you don't know is kind of the like internet rich guy, corporate hub of New York City. And they're all wearing a fleece vest and jeans and a cool baseball cap. I'm like, y'all are still doing this thing where you're all wearing the uniform.
And what's really interesting is like, I think about this a lot. We'll get back to the kids, but I'm so glad you brought that up, because when you're a woman as a leader in tech, it's like, well, heck, what's my uniform? I know it's not a fleece vest and sneakers and jeans. So how do I fit into that mold? And that is like a whole other conversation around, like, I never wore makeup my entire life. And now I'm on stage a lot. I do a lot of keynotes. I do a ton of media and podcasts. And now all of a sudden I'm wearing makeup. And I almost feel like, shouldn't I own my weird and be the person who doesn't wear makeup? And like Kim Scott, who wrote Radical Candor, like she doesn't wear makeup and it's just part of her brand. And I freaking love her for it. She's been an incredible mentor on this book. At least I never see her wearing makeup. And it's like, well, so am I even living my values when I decided I had to be like the 7th grade lemming who was like, oh, everyone's wearing makeup. I have to also now. But getting back, so like net, this stuff is hard. It's even hard for me, even though I wrote the book, but sometimes we write about what we are most working through ourselves.
As we should.
So yes, in high school, being weird, like saying something outlandish or acting in a way that is not with the norm can lose all your friends for that day and even that year. I made a huge mistake in 7th grade. I was brand new to the school, didn't know a soul. I went into language arts class. Miss Howard gave her little spiel about her background and what we were going to learn that year. And then she said, anybody have any questions? Well, desperate for a laugh and trying to make some kind of impression, I raise my hand and I say, I have a question. Are you a virgin? Oh, that's the right response.
Oh, poor 7th grade Jenny. You were going for it.
I was going for it. And then as you learn and as you grow, you go for it in different ways, in ways that are more thoughtful and smarter. And I realized that standing out in that way was obnoxious. It wasn't helpful. Funnily enough, I ran into her at the supermarket that afternoon in the greeting card aisle, and I walked like the longest 10 steps of my 11-year-old life. And I stammered out an apology, and she accepted it graciously. But that's not the weird we're going for. We're going for the fact that within your so-called weirdness lie your greatest strengths. So hone every ounce of weird you've got, because in school, yep, I get it. Everyone wants to wear the same stonewashed jeans. But then when you're in the workforce or when you're kind of in the adult world, the world is far too busy and competitive with 8 billion people for anybody who's not weird to make a dent. So what does that look like in adult life? Let's say you're in a new role and you're nervous to say something in a meeting of 50 people, but it's the people who raise their hand and say the thing in the meeting of 50 people who end up standing out, getting recognized, being visible, getting on the boss's radar, etc.
Yeah. And I think it's just a useful construct because I think a lot of what we fear is being told we are one of these words, that we want to speak up for ourselves, but we don't want to come off as bossy, and we want to figure out a problem, but we don't want to come off as nosy. And I love the flipping of the script that this book does, which allows us to say, let's do another translation of this word.
Yeah. And it also helps people pay attention, right? Weird is authenticity. Selfish is self-advocacy. Shameless is confidence. Manipulative is influence and relationship building. Bossy is leadership. We've heard these words for decades: leadership, confidence, self-advocacy, authenticity. And so this is also shaking it up a little bit and getting people excited about it and hopefully paying attention in a different way, because I deeply at my core want to help people get unstuck, want to help the talented, skilled, experienced, incredible people out there get out of their own way so that they can achieve their greatest goals. And I started all of my excitement about coaching people to be better than they think they can be at Google, which is full of experienced, top class talent. And there were so many people who felt stuck or felt imposter syndrome, who couldn't get out of their own way. And it pained me. It made me deeply, deeply sad, and it made me just so hungry to get out there and help people any way I could, which is why I wrote this book. And I imagine if those people who are really talented and experienced with the best pedigree at Google are feeling this, then lots of people everywhere else are feeling it too. This lack of confidence to stand up for themselves and go after what they want unapologetically.
Absolutely. I'm talking to Jenny Wood. She is the author of Wild Courage, and we will be right back.
You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about, like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today. DSW. Let us surprise you.
My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com. So one of the things about finding the kind of flip between being bossy That's actually having the courage to listen and lead. It's not that you're just flipping the script and then everything is settled. That like, no, you're not weird. You're courage to stand out. But as you acknowledge, that's not asking an inappropriate question in seventh grade. And so let's talk a little bit about calibrating the change between these things, because I think sometimes we can make that mistake of, in order to be successful, I need to become a completely different version of myself. And first of all, that's really hard, maybe impossible. And second of all, you lose in that process some authenticity that is making you attractive to people. It's somehow being who you are, not just trying on a costume, but then finding the calibration.
Yeah. And so the two things I want to share here. One is about the calibration in general, and maybe even talking about, let's say, introverts. And the other is maybe the calibration around the trait obsessed specifically. So first, let's talk about the calibration. Like I said earlier, you may not be a subway chaser. You may not be, the kind of person who's going to hear your VP talk in a town hall and then go tap them on the shoulder as they're walking down the hall and saying, hey, will you mentor me? Like that is kind of a real next level of courage. However, if you're an introvert, there are so many things that you can do that are a little dialing up of wild courage, or introvert or not, right? No matter what community you came from, whether you were born in New York City or Japan, which is a totally different culture, or South America, where there's a lot more of a collective, don't stand out kind of vibe. And so no matter where you're coming from, there is something you can do right now to tap into your wild courage. And many of these things do not even involve another person. So let's say you're an introvert and you're writing an email. I call this woo with you. I wrote an email thanking somebody for having me in for a keynote, and every single sentence started with I wrote the first draft. I loved doing this keynote for your team. I thought you were great to partner with. I love the gift basket you sent me as a thank you. I have a new leadership training coming up, and if you want to pilot it, I would be thrilled to partner with you. I. It takes courage to flip the script and to woo with you. So I rewrote it. I looked at it, and I think the way I had written it out, the I was the beginning of like, all of them were on the left side. So it really stood out visually. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not how you get what I call nosy, right? Getting insatiably curious about what the other person wants and their perspective. And so I flipped all the sentences and I wooed with you. So I said, you were an incredible partner. Your team brought so much energy and enthusiasm during this session. You might benefit and find value in this new leadership training I'm doing. Would you like to pilot it? So even something as simple as that takes courage to think about how you're writing or how you're speaking with people, or even just flipping, if we're on the nosy concept here, which is about getting insatiably curious. Let's say you're at a wedding and you don't know anybody, or a networking event, and you go up to someone at the bar, focus on them, right? It's this concept of the spotlight effect. It's a social psychological principle that people love to think about themselves and talk about themselves. So rather than nervously worrying about what to say or how to act, put the focus on them. What was your favorite session from this morning? Or how do you know the bride or the groom? Or what are you most excited to learn today from this conference? And so I think those are ways that even as introverts, that can take wild courage to ask somebody a what or how question, as opposed to a yes or no question, or to write an email that focuses on them. So obsessed is interesting. Obsessed is the courage to set your own standard, to push, perform, persist, because none of these traits will serve you if you don't learn to deliver, not for some company, but to achieve your own ambitions. And sometimes those ambitions happen as a mom. I had this obsessed ambition to have 3 kids. And we went through IVF, and it was not easy to get pregnant. And we're talking about what I call trait traps right now. Like, how do you know when you've dialed the dial too far up and you've become actually obsessed or actually manipulative in the wrong way? So I was obsessed with having 3 kids. So we tested our embryos. And so we knew that we had a healthy embryo, but we unfortunately had a miscarriage with that healthy embryo. And at that point, my husband decided, I actually don't think I want to have 3 kids. And I was obsessed with having 3 kids. And we ended up not trying to get pregnant again. And I've never been more proud of any decision in my life to let go, to not get caught in a trait trap of my obsession of having 3 kids, even though that's always what I'd pictured. It was always our plan. It's part of the reason we moved to Colorado, to afford, be able to afford a bigger house. It's why we have an extra bedroom that is now my office that I'm sitting here recording from right now. And I just had to drop that obsession. I had to drop the rope with the anxiety monster about the fact that my vision, my tale, right, going back to truths and tales, was that I would have a third kid. And we had a really interesting time working through it. And I'm so grateful now that I don't have 3 kids, because this book probably wouldn't have happened. And this book is a pure joy. And we also have 1 child with special needs. And it's really nice to be able to manage the way we can right now. Barely with the 2 of them, plus my book baby.
And I think you talk about this, and I think it's very apropos for moms, is that the power of boundaries is a very big piece of courage that we don't always recognize. And I think especially for women, the idea of our job historically, especially maybe as moms, is to just give and give, but that the courage of boundaries seems to me so important. And I struggle with this myself, not the best boundary setter in the world. And talk about boundaries, because I feel like that's an area of courage that I want to work on and think about. And that what you just said, having 2 kids instead of 3 kids, it frees up a life for something very different. It's not only people are going to be mad at me. It's not going to be the life I pictured. Talk about boundaries, because I think that's so useful.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So this is what I call brutal, which is the courage to set your own limits and to protect your time and energy. And so it's essentially the power of no, because sometimes what gets in the way of our boundaries is people pleasing, but people pleasing pleases no one and keeps you small. And the reason I call it brutal, which sounds so intense, but it's because brutality, frankly, is cleaner. It's more effective. It's ultimately far kinder. So, part of boundaries is cutting through the bull and sparing everybody's time, energy, and attention. But that could be boundaries around saying no to not mincing words or not giving a half answer when you really mean, no, I am not able to go to that party. Not saying like, oh, maybe we can make it. We'll see what the schedule looks like that day. But in terms of something really big, like deciding not to have a third kid, which took about a year of my life to come to terms with. And I've got these 2 close friends in Boulder that I hike with regularly. And like the number of hikes we spent that year, me analyzing, should I try to convince John to have a third kid? Should I not? My goodness, so much gratitude to them for a year of listening. And this is years ago now.
God bless our women friends.
God bless our women friends. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. But really, I credit my husband, John, for the boundary that he had to go back to me after I miscarried and was going through something so difficult and so painful and so sad and such a loss and a letdown, to say, Jenny, not only are you going through this miscarriage, but I do not want a third kid. Like, think about the boundary he had that in that moment. And I'm so grateful for his boundary. So maybe that's how we flip it. Maybe we flip it in that when we're scared to have a boundary, think about the gift we might be giving to somebody else. John's boundary was a gift to me in that moment. It took me a year to realize it, but I look back with so much gratitude that we do not have a third kid. And even as I say that, it almost feels like the wrong, talk about pressure on women or, expectations of women. I almost get this pit in my stomach saying this to you and all these moms and women listening, that I'm grateful I decided not to have a third kid. It's like, oh no, that's not the rhetoric. No. But we celebrate children. We celebrate more children. If someone has 4 children, oh my gosh, wow. But for me, it just became not the right thing. I do feel a lot of pride in the fact that I look back and celebrate the decision to have a boundary around it, ultimately with really good guidance from my husband.
And one other thing I want to point out about this book for people listening is that it's really not about going from mom with a laundry basket to the head of a major company. It's not about like, you have to take this courage to go from A to Z. A lot of these are small daily actions that can really have a big impact in your life. So talk about a couple of those examples, because I don't want to leave people with the impression that this is about going from A to Z.
Oh, absolutely. That would be such a miss, honestly, on my part, if I left people with the impression that like, okay, I've got to chase someone off the subway and I've got to be an executive at Google and I've got to go write a book with Penguin Random House.
We're not chasing people off the subway, friends. It's just an example.
Exactly. But maybe you are celebrating your wins with your kids, whatever it is. Like when I did have something really exciting that happened at work, and this was a really tiny thing that happened at work, I got Ari ready for school and I walked him to school and the bell rang and I was like, Ari, something awesome just happened at work. We're actually going to ditch school today and we're going to go to the water park, so that he could see me celebrating my own success. And that win for you could be that you upsold a client, or you felt like you presented really well in a meeting, or you've been working on cutting out your ums and uhs and you knows when you speak to your boss, and you set a goal for yourself of marking a tally of only saying it 7 times in a 30-minute meeting or whatever your teeny tiny little itty bitty goal is. And then you hit that goal and you celebrate it publicly with your family, with your kids. Now, for me, it was a slightly bigger goal than that day, but it can be so teeny tiny. And these things are such high impact, like going back to woo with you, flipping your language in your email from sentences that start with I to sentences that start with you, or for just asking for something that you want, anything, right? It could be asking your boss. It could be sharing your power assets with your boss and asking for a project that aligns with them. What are your power assets? The 3 things that are your skills or talents that you bring to the table. For example, mine are people leadership, stakeholder influence, and building things from startup to scale. Do you know your superpowers? Do you know your power assets that make up your power portfolio? Maybe for you, the wild courage right now this week is to write down your 3 power assets and to share them with your manager, or to put them on your resume if you decide you're entering the workforce, or at the PTO meeting, the parent teacher organization meeting, raising your hand and saying, you know what, I want to get more involved this year. I want to lead one event, even though you typically are just there kind of nodding along, right? That's how you stand out. That's how you have wild courage. That's how you go after what you want, no matter what area of life it is.
Absolutely. We talk a lot about feeling stuck on this podcast. This is a great book for those of you who are in that stuck place. Actionable and very easy to understand. Jenny, tell our listeners they know where they can find the book. We're going to link to where you can find the book. You can buy it at independent bookstores. You can buy it at big bookstores. It's 2025, people. You know how to buy a book.
What you might not know is that when you buy the hardcover, that is incredibly beneficial to the author when the book is first coming out. It's like opening weekend at the box office. So, of course, if you're an audio person, go for it. But if you're indifferent, it's available in audiobook and Kindle and hardcover. But the hardcover helps the author so much during the beginning lifetime of the book. So that's something they might not know.
Okay, so listen, go buy the hardcover. And Jenny, tell our audience where else they can find you and your work.
Yeah, definitely. So they can go to itsjennywood.com and learn all about me. I've got stuff there about my keynote speaking and my consulting for companies. You can also join my newsletter. It's at itsjennywood.com, itsjennywood.com/newsletter. And you will get a guide, 8-tip guide to say no to meetings, favors, projects, right? This is all about that boundary setting that we were just talking about. And that's just my free gift for all of you listening here.
Love it. We barely scratched the surface, friends. There's so many more tips and reframings in this book. Go get Wild Courage. Go after what you want and get it by Jenny Wood. Jenny, thanks so much for talking to me today.
It was a total joy. Thanks for having me.